The lights are low, and the gym hums with quiet tension as the sound of sneakers echoes against polished wood, and this is where the story truly begins, not with a headline or a rumor, but with a moment that felt different from the very first breath. Caitlin Clark walks into USA basketball camp, carrying more than just a ball. She carries the weight of a league. At a crossroads, and everyone in that building knows it, fans have been waiting for this moment, waiting to see her not just shoot alone in an empty gym, but stand face to face with real competition in a real environment. And what they did not expect was that the most powerful play she would make would not come from a three-point line, but from a microphone. She stood there, calm, focused, and unafraid, and in that instant, the entire conversation around women's basketball shifted forever, because Caitlin Clark did what nobody else with power had been willing to do. She told the truth, and she told it straight. This was not about flashy drills or leaked clips of jump shots. This was about the future of the league, and she was done watching it get played with behind closed doors. The energy at camp felt electric as familiar faces arrived, AB stepping in with quiet confidence, Rakia Jackson ready to work, veterans and rising stars sharing the same space, yet the air was thick with something unsaid. Months of frustration, months of delays, months of fans asking the same question: will there even be a season? And while the league and the Players Association kept pushing deadlines further into the future, the clock kept ticking toward January 9th, a date that now felt like a cliff edge. The negotiations had dragged on past the original October deadline, and every extra day felt like another crack in the foundation of the momentum that had finally been built, and that momentum was real. The most successful season in league history, sold-out arenas, television ratings that shattered expectations, and a massive television deal worth billions, all of it driven by players finally capturing the attention of the wider sports world. And at the center of that storm stood Caitlin Clark, the player who packed arenas night after night, the player who turned casual viewers into loyal fans, the player who made the WNBA impossible to ignore. And yet, while that momentum was peaking, something strange was happening behind the scenes. The very people tasked with protecting the league were also investing in alternatives. Board members of the Players Association were signing deals with rival 3-on-3 leagues and claiming to negotiate in good faith at the same time, and fans could feel the disconnect. Even if they could not fully see it yet, every delay, every headline, every whisper about canceled seasons felt wrong, like watching someone slow down just as they reached the finish line. And then came the moment that changed everything. Caitlin Clark stepped up and spoke, not with anger, not with theatrics, but with clarity. She said this was the biggest moment the league had ever seen, and it could not be messed up. She said players deserved everything they were fighting for, but they also needed to play basketball, because that was what the fans wanted. And that was how the league actually grew. Those words hit harder than any dunk, because they cut through the noise. She was not choosing sides. She was choosing the game. She was saying out loud what fans had been screaming from their couches, that you cannot build a future by canceling the present. She made it clear without naming names that she was not interested in side projects or distractions. She wanted real games, a real competition, and a real season. And suddenly, the narrative flipped. Because when the biggest star in the sport says we need to play, it becomes impossible to ignore. She went further, explaining that money is made on the court. It's not in empty gyms, not in exhibitions, but in full arenas, with fans invested in the product. She offered compromise, suggesting a shorter agreement that could be revisited once growth continued, showing that she understood both sides, but refused to accept stagnation. This was leadership in its purest form, the ability to see beyond ego and focus on what actually moves the needle. The league had put real numbers on the table, increased salary caps higher, maximum contracts revenue, sharing tied to growth, and yet the risk on the other side was absolute zero if there was no season. No growth, no checks, no momentum, and Caitlin Clark saw that danger clearly. She knew her presence sold tickets. She knew her games drove ratings, and she knew that fans who had just discovered the league could disappear just as quickly if disappointed. Momentum is fragile, and once lost, it is nearly impossible to recover. And while she could thrive anywhere overseas, endorsements, media deals. She chose to stand up for the league. She believed in, she chose loyalty over leverage, and in doing so, exposed a harsh truth: many players depended on the season far more than they could afford to admit. A canceled year would hurt role players, bench players, and young athletes fighting for stability, far more than it would hurt stars with safety nets and dot. That was why her words carried so much weight. She was speaking for those who could not risk speaking at all. She was calling out a system where leadership seemed insulated from consequences while everyday players waited anxiously for clarity, and fans felt the impact immediately. Social media erupted not with confusion but with relief, because finally someone had said what needed to be said. The response was overwhelming support for her stance, because it aligned with the simple truth that sports exist to be played and watched, not endlessly negotiated. Analysts pointed out the irony that those with the most leverage were willing to compromise while those with competing interests held firm, and that imbalance became impossible to unsee. Her statement placed the union in a corner, because continuing to delay after the face of the league called for action made them look disconnected from both fans and players, and the implications went even deeper. Her words gave the league a powerful narrative that if necessary, they could lean on the fact that their biggest star wanted to play, and fans would listen. That kind of influence is rare and undeniable. She did not threaten, she did not posture. She simply stated reality, and reality has a way of forcing decisions whether people are ready or not. She reframed the conflict from players versus owners to something far more uncomfortable: fans and players versus dysfunction, and that shift mattered because sports ultimately survive on audience trust, and once that trust erodes, it takes generations to rebuild the stakes. Where clear expansion teams had invested massive sums, networks had committed prime airtime, sponsors had aligned their brands, and all of it depended on games actually happening. Caitlin Clark understood that this was not just about the next contract, but about the next decade. She was thinking long-term, while others were stuck in short-term power plays, and that difference in vision defined the moment. She did not need to attack anyone directly, because the truth stood on its own, and everyone knew exactly who she was addressing. Her calm honesty carried more force than any accusation, and now the pressure is on. The clock is still ticking, and the path forward is clear, even if it is not easy play. Now the season builds on the momentum and come back stronger or risk losing everything that was just gained. Caitlin Clark has made her position unmistakable. She wants to play. She wants the league to grow, and she wants fans to be rewarded for believing, and by speaking up, she has changed the balance of power. Because stars define leagues, and right now she is the star that moves everything forward. The silence that followed her words spoke volumes, because when someone that undeniable speaks, everyone else has to respond, and whether they fall in line or resist. One thing is certain: the conversation will never go back to what it was before. This was not just a leaked moment from camp, it was a turning point, a reality check, and a challenge to everyone involved to decide whether they truly care about the future of women's basketball, or are willing to let ego and side interests stand in the way. And now, the league waits. The fans wait, and the answer will come not in words, but in whether the ball tips off again, and when it does, everyone will remember the moment Caitlin Clark stood up and said,